Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a social experiment that honestly sounds like it was ripped straight out of a Hollywood movie, but it is 100% real. We're looking at a Texas billionaire who literally had everything, yet chose to strip it all away to go undercover in his own massive empire. You know, what actually happens when the boss becomes the most vulnerable person in the room? Well, let's find out.
Okay, let's dive into this. What was the central, pressing hypothesis that drove Michael Harper to abandon his luxury life in the first place? Think about it. When you're a billionaire CEO, people really only show you their absolute best side. Michael realized he was basically isolated in this corporate silo, just living in a bubble of luxury and compliance. But he was kept up at night by one huge question. Do my employees actually treat each other well, especially the folks who are poor or brand new? He didn't want the sanitized boardroom reports. He wanted the unfiltered, messy truth.
And just to put things into perspective, Harper Industries isn't some small operation. We are talking about a massive company right in Texas, employing thousands of people across all sorts of departments. Michael Harper wasn't just a mid-level manager. He was a billionaire sitting at the very top of this gigantic pyramid. So keeping that massive scale and wealth in mind really highlights the sheer, shocking contrast of the method he was about to use.
And this brilliantly illustrates the extreme lengths of his disguise. To actually get the real answers, Michael had to completely erase his billionaire identity. I mean, he ditched the tailored suits and the luxury cars, grew out his beard, threw on some worn-out ordinary clothes, and styled himself exactly like a guy who was just desperately struggling to find a basic job. He made himself totally invisible to the corporate elite so he could finally see how the ground floor really operated.
So, what was the game plan for this undercover operation down on the warehouse floor? It was actually strictly structured. He planned to arrive at the security gate first thing in the morning to test those crucial initial impressions. Then, midday, he'd roam around the different departments to just observe how peers interacted with each other. And finally, in the afternoon, it would all culminate in the ultimate social gauge, the lunchtime test.
Well, the harsh reality check started almost immediately. Right at the front gate, Michael approached a security guard, just politely asking for information about getting a job. And the guard? He literally looked him up and down, laughed at his unkempt appearance, and told him, "Look at your face in the mirror first, then ask for a job." It was incredibly cruel. It broke Michael's heart, but he kept his head down, held his tongue, and walked inside. The experiment was already proving his absolute worst fears right.
And guys, once he got inside the warehouse, the data he gathered was just as toxic. He's walking the floor, observing, and yeah, he saw some hardworking individuals. But he also uncovered this deep-rooted, ugly culture of elitism and bullying. Employees were openly mocking his ordinary clothes. They teased him, specifically targeting him because he looked poor and vulnerable. He literally watched staff members actively take pleasure in degrading newcomers. It was a hostile environment thriving right under his nose, exactly the kind of toxic truth his billionaire lifestyle had completely shielded him from.
Now, what's really interesting about this is that right in the middle of all that mockery, a stark contrast emerged. Michael ran into an employee named David, and instead of judging him, David offered this incredibly warm smile to the seemingly poor stranger and just said, "Sir, if you need any help, I can assist you." It was just a simple gesture of humanity, but in that toxic warehouse, it was a profound outlier. Michael graciously thanked him and kept observing, but David had definitely made a lasting mark.
The real turning point of the day happened during lunch. We all know break rooms can be highly territorial, right? The social dynamics were laid bare almost instantly. When Michael tried to find a seat, multiple employees explicitly told him no, completely alienating him just based on how he looked. But then David spotted him. He immediately made space at his own table and even went as far as sharing his own food with this disguised billionaire.
So the crucial point is what happened next. Still playing the part of a man with absolutely nothing, Michael asked David why he was going out of his way to help him. David just smiled and shared this core philosophy. Translating a phrase from Hindi, because a person's value is not measured by their clothes. Every person deserves respect. That single sentence proved to Michael that true character and the real return on investment of empathy actually exist, even in the toughest environments. It was exactly the answer he was looking for. So at the end of the day, Michael quietly left the warehouse. His experiment was complete.
Now, we fast forward exactly 1 week. Out of nowhere, the company announces a sudden, mandatory, all-staff meeting in the massive conference hall. Everyone, we're talking executives down to the warehouse floor workers, was called in. You can imagine the air was just thick with confusion and suspense. Nobody had a clue why this massive gathering was happening.
The murmurs in the huge hall finally died down as the real CEO, Michael Harper, stepped onto the stage. The crowd, immediately recognizing their billionaire boss in his usual sharp attire, erupted into applause. But Michael didn't gloat. He just smiled, let the room quiet down completely, and dropped a bombshell. He said, "A week ago, I came among you as an ordinary man."
And the fallout was immediate. Absolute pin-drop silence filled the massive hall as the realization hit everyone. Employees started looking around at each other in total shock. You could practically see the color completely drain from the faces of the bullies who had mocked the poor man at the warehouse. They knew they were caught. And just to remove any shred of doubt, Michael queued up the screens and played the hidden camera recordings from his undercover day. All of that cruel behavior was exposed for the entire company to see.
With the evidence laid bare, Michael addressed the stunned room to completely redefine what corporate success meant for Harper Industries. He stated clearly and firmly, "Company success isn't just measured by profit, but by how we treat others." He explained that he disguised himself to find out the truth about his company's soul. And he made it crystal clear, a toxic culture of disrespect would no longer be tolerated, no matter how much money the business was making.
Let's see how this builds into concrete changes, because Michael didn't just give a nice speech and call it a day. He fundamentally restructured his business. He called David up to the stage to roaring applause, pointing out that when everyone else ignored him, David showed true humanity. Because of that, David was promoted on the spot to head of employee development. Meanwhile, strict warnings were handed out to the disrespectful staff, and sweeping new policies were implemented across the board to enforce respect and equality. This undercover operation triggered a massive, complete culture shift. The source material confirms that from that day forward, the environment at Harper Industries transformed entirely. It became a place where employees actually smiled at each other, respected one another, and warmly welcomed newcomers. By stepping out of his luxury life and into the shoes of the most vulnerable, Michael Harper successfully diagnosed and cured a toxic culture that spreadsheets and board meetings could literally never have revealed.
This whole story leaves us with such a powerful takeaway about human nature, doesn't it? The person we might dismiss as just ordinary could actually be extraordinary. So I'm going to leave you with this provocative thought to reflect on for your own life. If someone dressed in ordinary, worn-out clothes walked into your workplace today, how would you treat them?